text message from another woman while he was in the car. That text message is seen by his girlfriend, Grace Jabari, at the time. She gets enraged and snatches the phone out of his hand. He then gets upset that she took the phone and then goes to retrieve his property from her. A struggle ensues where she claims that she was injured. Her finger was broken and she got an injury behind her ear. Again, that's what she alleged. He retrieves the phone and he jumps out the cab in the middle of the street. The cab is actually in the street and he jumps out the cab to get away from her. She then tries to follow him out the cab.
Everybody thinks that part is funny. Is everybody thinks that part is funny? I'm not picking on him or anything, but everybody finds that part funny because technically a man, you rarely see a man jump out of a vehicle to run away from somebody, to get away from and again, so I always say, who was really the aggressor in this situation? If he was looking to de-escalate the situation by leaving, who was really the aggressor?
But since she's so close to him, he then turns around and starts picking up and pushing her back into the car. Now, when she's pushing her back into the car, you can see that the top of her head is actually hitting the top of the car when he's pushing her back. But he's
now, I disagree with him on this one because in the opening statements, in the testimony, and when the day of the arrest, when they were they were going over, what happened to you, what what's the situation, what's the injuries. Her head was not, she didn't have a concussion yet. She didn't have a bump on her head. She had a laceration behind her ear. Still don't know how exactly the laceration happened behind her ear. And to her witness, she said that he slapped her, put his hands behind her head. Put her hands behind her back, all this other stuff. But picking her up and bumping her head was not one of the injuries. So I don't want, I have a problem with people's like, well, look, her head got knocked up. Well, obviously she didn't say she had a concussion. So did her head really get knocked? Or did the top of her hair go through the top, brush against the top of the car? Because she would have got knocked forward when she would have had a concussion or something like that. So I don't like that part because then it brings this false narrative that he, gave her some type of concussion or bump against the head or anything. What she said did not happen that day, even though clearly we see him pick her up and put her back in the car. Keep going.
Actively trying to get away from her. Eventually, he gets out of the car. She follows him. He pulls away from her. He starts running away from her, and she's chasing him. At the end of that episode, Grace Jabari then finds some random people on the street. They go out to the club and still have fun. Eventually, she goes back to the home in which her and Majors living together. She then passes out in the closet. When he arrives home in that morning, he sees her passed out and then calls 911, and that's where all of this starts happening. Now, he's essentially arrested and charged with assault and the domestic relations issues. But a lot of people don't realize Jabari was also arrested by the police for assault. Jonathan Majors.
And I am glad that he is saying this. He's going over all the details of the actual case, which is really good.
Just did have some injuries on his own person based on the fight. So essentially, both of them had legit assault claims. Now, the district attorney chose to prosecute Jonathan Majors and then declined to prosecute Jabari for the injuries that she caused Majors in that particular incident. So that's something that people, have been saying, this is the reason why it's wrong. But that's something that's really imperative to the story. The DA actively said, even though we know that Majors was injured by Jabari in that same incident, domestic relations, we're not going to charge her. We're not going to prosecute her. We're only going to prosecute Majors.
So what happens in court? What's the verdict?
So Jonathan Majors was tried. And
again, I do like the way that this is presented. Harassment in the second degree is not a crime. It's a violation. This is perfect. This is showing that, that no, he was charged with reckless assault. That's what he was charged with. This is what he's filing his appeal on. This is not a crime. This is a city ticket. This is essentially a violation. So this is not a crime. So technically, if you want to be technical, he was only charged with a crime of reckless assault. If you want to be technical, the other is a city violation.
And there was a split decision on the verdict. So, for instance, the jury found that he had assaulted his girlfriend, but recklessly. So they found him guilty of reckless assault, meaning that he acted in such a way that he didn't intend to hurt her, but he did hurt her. And essentially, it seems like the jury came to the conclusion that when he was trying to retrieve his phone, he didn't mean to hurt her, but he hurt her recklessly. He may have, pulled or grabbed her arm or something like that. Now, in assault, only thing you really need for an assault in New York is some type of bruise or injury. The second thing that he was found guilty of is not actually a crime. It's called harassment in the second degree. And for harassment, it's essentially annoying someone. If you're annoying someone and you're intentionally annoying them, then you can annoy them by slapping them, hitting them, but you don't cause them a physical injury. So by smacking your whole...
And again, the way that this is being presented, and Nate the lawyer explains that he was a NYPD cop. He became a lawyer, worked in the criminal justice system, all of that. So again, coming from New York, you see how easy it is to be able to get a reckless assault case, and how even easier it is to have a harassment case. Now, to me, again, Grace Jabari should have been charged and prosecuted for her crime because he had injuries on himself also. And we see within the midst of the scuffle that he was injured. Somehow, some way, he got injured. But again, District Attorney Alvin Bragg decided not to prosecute him. And, even of the day of this recording, we learned about the Kevin Porter case. Kevin Porter took a plea deal. Guess what charges he got? Reckless assault and second degree harassment in the second degree, which is not a crime. And as long as he keeps his nose clean, he gets the third degree assault charge dropped off of his record. But you already ruined this man's life, over nothing. And again, there was so much conversation that had to do with what happened with text messages, which if you go and watch my man Chillmonger's video, Grace Jabari never explained those text messages from September 2022. And, everybody's hooked up, and I got on black people about this. Y'all was so focused on Coretta Scott King. Coretta Scott King, who gives a crap? When you start to see there's a pattern going on in the Manhattan District Attorney's office, and instead of going and looking up that information, you want to go off of some Coretta Scott King crap. You know what I mean? Being disillusioned, especially some of the black people who was covering this, disillusioned by this comment or the way he acts or his behavior, and not looking at the behavior and the criminal acts that's going on with the Manhattan District Attorney's office. I'm calling it what it is. But let's keep going.
A bunch of times, but don't cause you a physical injury. That's harassment, and that's essentially a violation of parking ticket. The jury found him not guilty of intentional crimes. In other words, they said he didn't intentionally injure her. That's assault in the third degree. They said you didn't intentionally injure her. And then second, they didn't find him guilty of aggravated harassment, which is saying that he intentionally annoyed her and then caused her a physical injury. Now, this is the legal part that may get him a second bite at the apple. See, aggravated harassment is essentially assault, reckless assault, and harassment in the second degree combined. So if you think about it, the jury found him guilty of harassment, A, and assault, B, but then said, well, if you put them together, harassment and assault together, which is aggravated harassment, he's not guilty. So the jury found him guilty of they found him guilty of each of the underlying crimes separately, but then said if you put the underlying crimes together for aggravated harassment, we're going to find him not guilty.
All right, Nate, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Now we're going to jump.
Excuse me. So I'm going to kind of skip forward because I want to get into their Spidey's analysis of what he thought about Jonathan Majors and his interview. So I'm going to skip a lot of them watching their surveillance video and stuff. I'm going to skip that part. This is something I've covered over many videos. So if you want to go and watch those videos, you can to get my full thoughts on exactly, what I really thought about those. But here I'm just going off of their analysis of what they thought, and that's what I'm going to go off of. So I'm going to skip a lot of their surveillance videos and go straight into.
If you have a health or fitness goal
them.
you're trying to achieve.
All right, sorry about that. Let's get this. Just remove this real quick and get this off of the screen. All right, let's get back to it.
Experience in law enforcement in New York, in law in New York. And this is a case where we certainly see why they went after him, because we see in the footage as he's putting her back in the car, she bumps her head and all these different things. But we also see at the end.
And again, I get what he's saying, but if you really look at that video, there was not a whiplash. She didn't even mention to anyone that her head was hurting. So to be able to say, well, he put her in the car and he bumped her head is false, because she didn't even say that that's what happened. He literally clearly said, I picked her up and put her back in the car, but there was no bump on the head or anything. So that's a false narrative that, we're running with because we're seeing the video. Well, it looks like, but did she say, I got a concussion from this man? No, she did not. You know what I mean? So and like I said, I'm not picking on them. It's just an observation that I see, that I've seen that narrative get ran with. But let's keep going.
And he's trying to get away. She's running after him. And we also know certain things about injuries that he sustained. And I'm left wondering, it's very confusing for me why, after looking at this, they decided to go only after him. Prosecution said, we're going to go after him and not after her at all. And I'm left wondering, if the roles were reversed, would it still be the same? Basically, I guess what I'm saying is, do you feel that there's a cultural element or a gendered element to who they chose to go after, as opposed to just looking at the situation and saying, here's who we're going to prosecute?
The problem with his assessment, or the assessment that you see there, particularly when he was picking her up and trying to push her back into the car, and you see the top of her head hit the back of the car when he's trying to push her in. The issue with assault in New York is that it's very easy to commit. Just so everyone understands how light an assault is, assault in the third degree that he was found guilty of. If I come to someone and I smack them and they develop a bruise on their face, that is assault in the third degree. It doesn't have to be any type of gash or anything like that. It could be a light bruise. So in this particular case, if in that car, in the struggle, which he's admitted there was a struggle for that phone. If she's injured in any way, any bruise, any cut, any scratch, that's assault. But as Spidey, as you were very astute to point out, that also counts for him too, because you'll see that he was actually injured too. Now, the decision to prosecute him versus her, I think now is the cultural aspect to it. It's the one where we want to hold the men accountable, and we're gonna say that she's not accountable for the injury she caused him. And I think that's where the DA, because don't forget, she was arrested. Grace Jabari was arrested by the NYPD on the same charges, because she assaulted him when she grabbed his phone and caused him injuries keeping the phone, and he was trying to get it back. True. That was an assault on Majors, and the police arrested Jabari and took it to the DA's office, and district attorney declined to prosecute it.
Do you feel there's some?
And again, that was a problem with the district attorney. Again, unless she says she was hit, she bumped her head, as far as him putting her back in the car, because if you listen to the opening statements, the prosecution said he tossed her like a football. Nobody got tossed like a football. That's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? Hell, even if we were looking at European football, international football, he didn't toss her like a football. He didn't toss her like an American football. He put her back in the car. You know what I mean? And she didn't hold her head. If again, this is my assertion. Like I said, they're looking at it one way, I'm looking at another. If he would have picked her up and she would have really bumped her head when she would have grabbed her head, that's all I'm asking. I wish she would have grabbed the back of her head, like, ow, some type of pain induced, she wouldn't have, if you just got your head knocked off, you know what I'm saying, or he hit you to a point where you whiplash back because the top of your head technically hit the back of an SUV, then you're gonna feel it. Trust me. Me getting inside of the vehicles that I work on every day, you know, you might accidentally hit your head. It hurts. So yeah, I just feel a certain way about it. But anyway, let's keep going.
Unfairness to that?
Oh yeah, no, I think it's horribly unfair. I think if you switch the genders, she would be in the same situation. And I think when you start prosecuting based on emotions, feelings, and
District Attorney Alvin Bragg's
higher thought process instead of just the facts in front of you, then you can start getting these inequities. And I think it's totally unfair to him because he was injured by her. He was scratched, he was bleeding, it's, you know, those type of injuries too. And in all of the cases, that would be an assault. Matter of fact, if he was a woman, she would have been arrested for assault. So that's where I think the unfairness is. The unfairness is that you can have the same.
So I'm glad Nate the lawyer is saying this because it showed a biasness with the district attorney's office. Again, every black person who went onto the blogs was looking at this interview and, oh, Coretta, not looking at the biases from District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office and District Attorney Alvin Bragg's himself. But I'm kind of going to skip past this because it's just reiterating a bunch of stuff that I've already said. They're saying, they're just repeating. So I'm kind of skip past this. Let's go here.
I want to say that if our reflex is to go, oh my God, he's laughing at this, let's try to look at it from both ends. It can be that, but it can also just be this nervous energy coming out.
Yeah, speaking of chuckles, the chuckle at the end I thought was interesting because she kind of co-signs what he was saying about the running away, and it was like that was like a chuckle of relief, like, oh my God, finally she gets it, you know.
I get free of her and I run.
For blocks.
Yeah, for blocks.
Again, when you do interview and interrogation in law enforcement, rapport building is a key cornerstone of interview and interrogation. And that little chuckle would let you know that you're starting to build a good rapport because the person now believes that you're, I hate to say buying their story, but that you're at least aligning with their version of events.
She says inside the car, you hit her in the face, twist her arm behind her back, fracture her middle finger.
Okay, I'm going to skip past this part because I just want to get to what they're saying.
Doesn't even finish her question, and we get a very clear that did not happen from him. And there are two things to mention about that. The first is, earlier we said, you know, sometimes he likes to buy time, sometimes, you know, there's a non-denial or a non-answer. We didn't get that here. We got a straight denial right off the bat. That did not happen. Now, we also have a non-contraction here. It's not that didn't happen, it's that did not happen. And a lot of behavioral analysts pay attention to this because when we're really trying to sell a story, we slow down the words to make sure the message is coming across. So in a cluster, we look for those non-contractions. But this is such a great example of what I said earlier. This man came back from a guilty verdict he does not understand. He needs to make sure this message is loud and clear. That did not.
And again, I know a lot of people were saying that, you know, it seemed like he was performing. If I'm trying to tell a story, I think everyone, and I know because I got on Van Lathan about that, but he was just seemed like he was just acting. This nigga was just the way that he was coming across was totally disrespectful. At the same time, if I'm telling a story, there's going to be a way then I'm going to present that story for you to clearly understand whether you think I'm performing or not. I got to tell you my story. I got to tell you my truth because it's my truth. And if I'm not able to tell my truth, then what am I here for? What am I doing this for? So yes, there's going to be particular information that I'm going to say, and it's going to come across. It's going to come across in a way where, you know, it's my story. And yes, I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna sell it a little bit. I'm gonna have to because y'all don't believe me anyway. Y'all believe y'all believed everything that she said. Now here I am. I'm doing this interview, and I need you to believe me. That's all I really want you to do is believe me. Because right now I'm stuck. What am I supposed to do? So I do believe there, but I don't like the fact because a lot of people just saying that because he's an actor. Well, hell. There's a lot of people who get on these witness stands or they tell their story. You see them in the interrogation room or whatever, and they're clearly lying. They're overperforming. So I like the way that they're going to break this stuff down. They're going to talk more about it, but I just kind of wanted to get that point across. It is going to be some performance in there, but how much are you really trying to? Are you trying to WWE sell it? You know what I'm saying? Or you just really? Are you telling your story so it's clear, concise, and it doesn't affect what you're trying to do as far as your future appeal case and all of that? Keep going.
Not happen. So to me, him taking the time to really push these points home isn't as guilty as it might normally be, because he's in a position where he really needs you to understand this. Another thing to keep in mind is that because he has that slow, articulate manner of speaking, these non-contractions happen with him a lot more often than they do with casual speakers. So to me, that non-contraction isn't as important as it would be.
And I was trying to say that even when Van Lathan was talking about, I think he's lying, this and the way that this man speaks, he has a certain pattern. To me, it just seems real introverted. So in all of his interviews, he doesn't speak as fast as I do. My mouth runs a mile a minute. So I'm spitting off, I'm spitballing. Even when I know that I'm right, or if I sometimes I will slow down, but like, wait a minute, hold up. Let me think about this for a second before I answer. But 9 times out of 10, I'm going at 90 miles an hour. Jonathan Majors doesn't speak like that. He speaks real slowly and methodically. And he does that with all of his interviews. I'm watching his interview with oh God, I can't think of her name off tops right now. But I'm watching the interview when he was talking about when he went on his Creed 3 tour. And the way that he speaks is just is different. It's very articulate, but it's very slow, and it's very, it's almost like uneasy to me. You know what I mean? But again, that's the way the way I interpret his speech. Let's keep going.
Other situations. Nate, we were talking about this backstage and used a term that I really, really liked. At some point, as he's talking about what happened, he got hit and all this stuff, all of a sudden, we almost see him become this different person for a split second as he goes, "That's all I remember." And his pitch goes up. It's very different from his baseline. It's almost like for a second, you said the mask falls off. And I agree. We have this thing where he's calm and composed and talking like this. All of a sudden, "That's all I remember." And Nate, we looked at my audio on the interview, and we even see the entire audio is down at one place, and that one place, it spikes. It's like we can visually see him breaking his baseline.
Slapped me. That's all I remember.
So there's this odd deviation from the way he normally speaks with this. "That's all I remember," with this high pitch. That's going to tie into my conclusion on this. So let's keep moving. Nate, I have a very quick question for you. What happens next? She says a cut, and he corrects it to a laceration. Is there any reason legally he would have done that? Because I found it odd that he almost corrected. She said cut, and he goes, "Laceration." "Yes, ma'am." Is there any reason for that?
Okay, let's get past that part. But I believe he said laceration legally, before I even get here, because I haven't seen this part. I believe he says it, he's getting ready to get his appeal. You know what I mean? So I believe he said it in a legal standpoint. Let's see what Nate says. Oh, sorry. Let's put that back on stage and let's go.
I don't know. Maybe laceration just sounds less, somebody cut you versus you had a laceration. Maybe the he's fighting every word to make it seem less.
That's a great theory.
The only thing that's interesting about that particular point is that if he didn't cause the laceration or cut, why would it matter to him how it's even being described, right? Unless I caused it, then I would say, well, you mean laceration, not cut. But if I don't, I'm like, I don't know, who cut it, right? So it seems to me that there seems to be even some struggle in his mind, or maybe he's just being too sensitive about the whole thing and trying to just downplay all the injuries.
Both are very, very real.
You know what? To piggyback off of what he said, I believe he's downplaying the injury. I'm thinking it is my look, I know I good and well I didn't cut cut this woman laceration, chop her ear off, whatever you say. I know I didn't do it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm gonna call it laceration. I'm downplaying all of this crap because this is unbelievable that I even had to go through this. I got my career taken over some bull crap. I don't care what I call it after at one point, personally for me, you know, but I believe he's trying to downplay it and trying to be as sensitive as possible because, again, he did this interview knowing good and well that he had an appeal coming up, that he was going to appeal the case. And I mean, even when I was on TMZ, that was like, why would you even go if you know all of this is going to happen? So, you know, to me, that's what I believe he's doing, but let's keep going.
Possibilities and brilliant observations. Then she asks him, how did these injuries happen? If not you, how did they happen? And we see this hesitation, this pause. We see that tongue again, just kind of resting, and we see an eye flutter. And there's a lot of research on eye flutter. It's something we do when we're processing information or committing something to memory or retrieving something from memory. So when we're thinking back, we often see this. So he's trying it. There's hesitation, and he's trying, and whether he's trying to think back or he's trying to formulate a thought here, it would look more or less the same. But he needs a second to think here. We're seeing this pause. Then he says something that was very interesting to me. He goes that he wishes he knew because it would give him some kind of peace. The answer to how these injuries happened, if he knew the answer, it would give him some kind of peace. There are two ways to look at this. One of them is to look at it the same way the parents of a missing child might say something like this. I just want to know where he is because it would give me some kind of peace, some answer. Even if they had nothing to do with it, that answer would give them some form of closure on this. You can look at it like that. But you can also look at it as him having an ounce of doubt in his mind, going, is it possible that in this tussle, something happened that I may have somehow caused this? The answer to that would give me peace, would let me know for a fact whether I caused this or not. A little part of it might be going, it's possible that in this event, something may have happened. Not intentionally, but something may have happened. Then she asks if he was reckless, as the jury found. And again, we have this sort of non-answer, but it's almost poetic. I was reckless with her heart.
Yeah. And we you know, me, Chill, all of us thought that was a player move. He pulled a player move. Let's be real. And, you know, everybody's laughing at that. But it is true, though. It's true. If he would have let her go, we probably wouldn't be in this situation. But he didn't let her go. I mean, he let her go, but he brought her back in. And, you know, everybody's laughing at that. But it's the truth. And it's the way that he said it. And it was a smooth line. Let's keep it real. It was a very smooth line. Let's keep going.
And that's like, ooh, we get some poetry here. We got some, you know, this is a Yale graduate who studied theater. And this is such a beautiful moment of like, I was reckless with her heart. And it almost for a second goes, but then you go, wait, that doesn't answer the question. So it's again, that kind of very well put kind of sidestep and a non-answer if you think about it. And then he makes it very clear that he's never hit a woman. So we have this kind of, I was reckless with her heart. So we're kind of redirecting here. And then I'm going to clarify, I want to make this very clear that I've never hit a woman. And I think he firmly believes.
And that's what I said, you know, on TMZ is that, you know, one thing he did admit, he admitted to being a bad boyfriend, but he made it perfectly clear that he said from the very beginning, he never put his hands on a woman. He's never physically assaulted. I'd rather be a bad boyfriend than an abuser. And I love the way that he did that. Let's keep going.
Believes this, that he's never, even if through some possibility, his actions ended up causing harm, he has never intentionally hit a woman to cause harm. He hasn't done that. And that's why he could say that part very confidently at the end. Nate, would you agree with that? That like, we're getting a little bit of sort of dodginess about whether this could have caused an injury, but a lot of confidence in the sense that he never hit her. He never at any point intended to strike her, because that denial is very clear.
I think the denial, it's so weird because I just thought about it now. The denials actually match the jury's verdict. Were you reckless? Yeah, I was reckless with her heart, But did you intentionally? No, I didn't. I never intentionally hit a woman. And that's essentially what the jury said, right? You recklessly injured her. That doesn't mean he had to actually physically hit her, right? He could have done it in a different way, pulling the phone back or something like that. There's many ways you can recklessly injure someone without physically hitting them. But one thing I think that we have to understand is that Jonathan Majors is in a horrible catch-22 scenario when it comes to the law.
Yes.
See, in New York, we call it justification, but generally it's known as self-defense. Self-defense is at a point in which you have to admit to doing something so you can be found not guilty. The classic example is in a murder case, right? So you can say if you kill someone and the state charges you with murder, and if you claim that it's self-defense, you're essentially admitting that you killed the person,
killed this person,
but you were legally justified in that killing.
Yeah.
Now, there is no such thing as saying I didn't kill the person, but it's still self-defense, right? Because the only way you can do self-defense is by admitting to the underlying crime. The same thing here with this assault charge. See, Jonathan Majors, to essentially be found not guilty of the reckless assault, would have to admit to the underlying conduct, the assault. And the way he'd have to do that is saying, well, remember when I told you she took my phone and she admitted she took my phone? Well, in trying to retrieve my property back from her, she was injured. New York law, Article 35, allows victims of crimes to try to retrieve their property using force. And if the person is injured while you're trying to retrieve your property.
And shout out to Danny and Kat for pointing this out during the actual trial. Nate, the lawyer, is bringing it home. But shout out to Nate and Kat and Danny for pointing this out. Laura Victoria Burt also said this, so shout out to them for this. This is excellent information. This is just reiterating. At first I was hesitant to watch this, but this is reiterating a lot of the conversations that me, Danny, Kat, Chill, She Dressed Me, all of us who were talking about this, Flavio Blabet, all of us that's talked about this, bringing this home. This is excellent.
You are justified in injuring them as long as it's proportional, right? He couldn't shoot her to retrieve his phone, but he could grab her arm or do something to retrieve his property. Now, this is the catch-22 because he wants to make it very clear that he doesn't intentionally hit women, which I think is still the case. But I think he thinks it's a loss if he admits to recklessly injuring her and trying to retrieve his property. But as you'll hear all the lawyers in this field would say, if he would have just admitted that, hey, yes, when we were struggling in the back for that phone, she may have been injured, but she was injured in me attempting to retrieve my property. That's what made it justified. And then you automatically get a not guilty verdict. But I think his career and where he's at in life, he feels that admission may be too much. But then even in the
and he makes an excellent point. I love the point that he's making. And I love the point that he's making because no matter what Jonathan Majors did, they were trying to make him guilty. And so I do believe, I do believe that Jonathan Majors was at a point in his career was like, look, I don't want to have anything to do with any type of harassment or assault or any of that. I did not do that, which he didn't, but did he recklessly do it? We don't know. We don't know how she got her injury. She didn't even know how she got her injuries. Again, she's on talking to the cop on tape 19 times saying, I don't know. And this is where I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And I'm going to show you that I do believe that he will win an appeal. And this is the reason why I believe that he will win the appeal, just because of Kevin Porter's case and what Kevin Porter actually I gotta go in and find the actual case, and shout out to again Lauren Victoria Burke. for tagging me in here. But this is the reason why I'm going to share this. I do believe that, Jonathan Major will win his appeal. This is, he was charged with reckless assault and harassment in second degree, which is not a crime. Right? So the resolution would allow Mr. Porter to put this incident, which involved false felony allegations or false facts behind him with no criminal record, and move forward. This is this is from his lawyer because he accepted a plea deal. Now, what was that plea deal? He accepted the aggravated second degree harassment. I mean, the reckless harassment, and matter of fact, this is from the Washington Post. So let me share this real quick. Oh, good Lord. No, that doesn't matter. So he reaches a plea deal over alleged assault. Former NBA player Kevin Porter Jr. reached a plea agreement with the prosecutors in New York over a September domestic violence incident involving his ex-girlfriend and former WNBA player. I think it's is it Kaisri Gongrezik? I can't pronounce that to save my life. As part of the agreement, Porter would plead guilty to a misdemeanor reckless assault. Does this sound familiar? Matter of fact, let me full screen here. This is going to sound familiar. As part of the agreement, Porter will plead guilty to a misdemeanor reckless assault and harassment, which consider a violation, a level of offense below misdemeanor in New York. If he completes 26 weeks of private counseling and stays out of trouble, prosecutors will allow him to withdraw his guilty plea on the assault charges, leaving the harassment violation on his record. So we see this. I believe that this is what they were going to try to do with Jonathan Majors. I honestly believe that. But Jonathan did not want to play hardball because he's like, I ain't harassed nobody. I didn't do nothing. You know what I mean? And because he didn't want to play ball, you know what I mean? And just get a deal. All they want is a prosecution. No matter how low level it is, the district attorney's office job is to get a conviction. That's it. No matter how low level, how high level, it doesn't matter. Conviction is all they want. Right? So I already read that this is what he wants. Now, again, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office was doing the fool with this case. To the point where they were saying he hit her, he struck her in the face, he bruised her, strangled her, all of that. And the woman came out and said, he never touched me at all, never touched me. I'm even surprised that he took the plea deal, but the plea deal, as long as he completes 26 weeks, which is 6 months. Again, I said, normally, and I've said this before, normally on cases like this, what they would do is give you 6 months probation, right? Anger management classes. And 9 times out of 10, your record will get expunged off your record. That's what normally happens in a case like this. This is what they wanted. I believe that this is what they wanted to do with Jonathan Majors, and he didn't want to play ball. That's what I believe. Let's keep going. I want to finish this up.
At these answers that you hear, when he's asked about recklessness, it's still, I really don't know. I'm reckless with a heart. When it's about intentional, I didn't intentionally harm her. So I think he has to word it very carefully here because of his appeal. Because of that appeal, it's clear I didn't intentionally do it, but recklessly, I might have to cop to recklessly doing it. So I don't want to foreclose that door right now. I didn't intentionally hit her, but recklessly, I was reckless with a heart.
I do have one more question, Nate, and this is more of an opinion thing than behavioral analysis. Earlier, he said that it was very stupid of him to grab her and put her back in the car. Now, he didn't build on that, but presumably the reason that's stupid is because you don't lay your hands on someone. You never lay your hands on someone. So he understands that it was stupid of him to kind of forcefully put her back in that car. As a result, it would stand to reason that it's possible that while he was doing that, in that moment, she could have hurt herself. I mean, we see her hit her head. You know, who else? It's not like he's carrying her and very meticulously.
Again, if we go back and watch that, why wasn't that one of the charges? That's the only thing I'm saying. Not saying what he's saying is wrong because he has his own eyeballs. He's seen what he's seen. Nate, the lawyer, seen what he's seen. To me, that was not part of the crime. That was not part of the trial. That's not something that she said he did. So I don't know why we keep bringing that part up. He picked her up. He forcefully picked her up and put her back in the car, which if you forcefully pick somebody up and move them against their will, it can be considered kidnapping. You know what I mean? Or, you know, or harassment. So, but I think that just gets to my crawl. That part, it just gets to my crawl because that's not what she said.
Putting her in there, she could have hurt her finger. So do you feel like there's some sort of contradiction there to him saying that was stupid of me to put her back in the car that way? And now going that, you know, no, you know, when the interviewer asked about the finger injury or all these injuries, is there a possibility you could have caused that? And him going, no, that's not what happened. That's not true. Like, I feel like there might be a little bit of a contradiction there. No?
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Sorry, y'all. I don't know why I would choose a Sleep Number soft bed. Well, let's get this off of the screen. Let's kind of just... All right, let's get back to it.
Putting her in there, she could have hurt her finger. So do you feel like there's some sort of contradiction there to him saying that was stupid of me to put her back in the car that way? And now going that, you know, no, you know, when the interviewer asked about the finger injury or all these injuries, is there a possibility you could have caused that? And him going, no, that's not what happened. That's not true. Like, I feel like there might be a little bit of a contradiction there. No?
Yes, I think you're dead on the money. I think the issue is that differences between him being labeled as an abuser of women versus this just being a reckless assault, that's pretty trivial. And I think it's all conflated into two. If he believes that if he's seen as causing any of those injuries, that he's going to be labeled as an abuser in any way, right? Nobody's going to.
And that's what the media
be this nuance and say, well, you didn't do it this way, you didn't do it this way.
And that's what the mainstream media tried to do also. Let's not get it twisted. The mainstream media made it seem like this man was the worst abuser this side of Ike Turner. Let's be honest. So I can understand why he's saying that.
This way. That's I think his biggest fear. But I also think if you listen to what he's saying, he's essentially comping to some of the charges. For instance, the harassment in New York is essentially physically touching somebody and not injuring them. I gave the example earlier. If I kept slapping you on the side of the cheek but caused no physical injury, that's harassment in the second degree. That's what they find you guilty of. Picking somebody up and keep pushing them back into a car. That's without injuring them. Now that's the key. That's harassment in the second degree. So in a sense, he's literally admitting to the underlying harassment, but still trying to play this role of I didn't intentionally do it. And I think that's the nuance that he really is trying to put forward. I am not an abuser of women. I didn't intentionally abuse her. All this stuff happened just for this one situation. I think that's the unfortunate part that he's got to overcome. And I think the only way he can do that is essentially a cop to the assault, but say that it was, he accidentally injured her while trying to retrieve his property. I think that's the best outcome he can hope for now. But again, I don't believe he thinks that. I believe he thinks the only way he can get his job back and get his career back is to pretend that he didn't injure her at all, which I think is just so much of a harder sell.
Especially given that there's this footage of there being some sort of physical putting her back in the car.
Yeah.
Which he admits is stupid.
And which is the technical definition of harassment in the second degree. Physically putting somebody back into the car. That's it. You got harassment in the second degree.
During the trial, an audio recording was presented in court by the prosecution of Jonathan Majors and Grace Jabari during an argument.
Civil rights leader.
Okay, let's get to because I knew it was coming.
To give perspective as into what it is I was hoping to get out of the relationship. I think that's fair.
Nate, we both have quite a few things to say about that clip. I want to start with something that is probably more your place to comment on than mine, but this is something I'm very aware of because of my degree in sociology, because I studied this a lot in sociology. So Reverend Jesse Jackson, this is a name that a lot of people in the Black community will know. He was a huge civil rights leader. And there was a poem that he very often recited. He was very well known for it, and he would yell it to the crowd, and they would yell it back. He even did it on Sesame Street in the 70s, and it's called I Am Somebody.
We used to say
And he
that
would go,
in school.
even if I'm poor, I am somebody. They would repeat it. And even if I'm on welfare, I am somebody.
Hey, if you went to Parker Elementary School back in the 80s, we had to say this every morning.
I may be poor, but I am somebody.
The moment I heard this speech from Jonathan Majors that he's giving, there were so many parallels between those poems of affirmation, that I was like, this must be rooted for him in being around religious people. So I went and looked up his past, and his mom is a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And I can guarantee you, because these affirmations of like, I am important, I am somebody, I am capable, doesn't matter. These affirmations are something we see a lot in churches, said by pastors, by reverends, by civil rights leaders. And I know I'm getting way out of my own lane here, but I just wanted to see if you see that same parallel of these affirmations coming through, because as he was growing in his career, I promise you, there were times where he had to say these things to himself and go.
And this is what we were saying. We were saying that, because of the title that he holds, the position that he's in, he's going to say these certain things. And there's nothing wrong with those affirmations, especially when you're in Hollywood and there's not a lot of Black people that's getting the type of roles and the type of jobs and stuff like that you're getting. So yes, I'm going to say that I'm a great man. You're not going to tell me that I'm not great. You know what I mean? And I never looked at that point, and I'm glad he said that his mom was a pastor, and the way that he said it, that makes more sense now. Okay, let's keep going.
You're capable. You're a great man. You're a great actor. Because he faced a lot of adversity to get to where he is. So I'm wondering if you're seeing those parallels.
Now, I'm hoping I don't get canceled for saying this, but I just got to be honest. In American society, the higher you climb up the mountain, the wider the peak gets. What does that mean? That means when the more successful you are in life, the less Black people there are up there at that upper echelons that are at that
very
level.
true.
For instance, when I went to law school, when I went to junior high school, there were Black people all over the place. When I went to law school, I was like one of only 3 Black men in the whole class.
I'm
right?
glad he's speaking.
Like 7 of us in a class of 300 people. The way in the African American community, the way that we try to overcome that is that we belong.
Yes.
I belong at this place. I belong here. You are somebody. You can achieve that because generally, if you're from my community, like even the hood in Harlem, you're aspiring to kind of leave where you are and join those people on those successful places. But if you don't believe you belong there, then it's going to be harder for you to get there and stay there than if you do believe that you belong.
Nate preaching now.
So it's essentially trying to stop the imposter syndrome when you get there and you're like, this is just the wrong place. So like, no, you belong. So that's why those things are kind of those self-affirmations are very important, especially to young Black kids. But that's when I saw him saying this, that's where I got it. And I will say this. I think the biggest issue here with him saying that he's a great man, because I believe career-wise, he achieved great things. And he can technically, you say, yes, what he achieved is great. But comparing himself to Martin Luther King and to all these great men, they were great not because of what they did for themselves, but what they did for the community, right? Martin Luther King gave his life for the cause. Barack Obama led the country, right? And again, if you listen to The Breakfast Club or any of the Black shows, they'll tell you that, he is not them.
So there is something I want to say, however, about all these affirmations.
And again, who gives a crap about the Breakfast Club and what they think? Or these other black publications, it was like, well, you're not there. But then if something was to happen, if Jonathan Majors did not get in this, so let me just say it like this. And I guarantee you, those who are in the chat that's still watching would agree with me on this. If he didn't get in this trouble and there was a situation that happened, the black community will be asking for brothers like Jonathan Majors to come speak up. What do you feel about this black issue? What do you feel about that black issue? If we had another George Floyd incident, or Trayvon Martin, or Alston Sterling, or Sandra Bland, or any of these type of people, we had another situation like this, I guarantee you, without a shadow of a doubt, black people will be asking, where's the black people who have to speak on our behalf? That's at the tippity top. Just like I said, the joke where Dave Chappelle says, well, what does Ja Rule think at this time? We're always looking for our entertainers and all of that to speak on the behalf of the black community, right? But then when a man says, well, I know where I'm getting at, I'm a great man, I want to be like, I'm aspiring to be like that, you ain't there yet. You're not there yet. You ain't there. Who are you? Like Van Lathan, the way that he spoke of, this nigga's crazy. That's the way that Van put this man in a box. He didn't even get there yet. You see what I mean? But then these are the first people like, well, where's the celebrities? Why they ain't doing nothing for the hood? They the ones with the money. Make it make sense, black people. And I'm not saying what Nate is saying is wrong. What Nate did is an excellent job of making that parallel to what we would say when we're getting to that spot, and how also, which he didn't, I don't even think he intentionally tried to do it, how the Breakfast Club would tell you that, these Breakfast Club, the Shade Room, all these other people will tell you, no, Negro, we'll knock you back down to that pedestal. But if we need you, I need you to be there. See what I mean?
Because this does have a very affirmation tone. And even today with motivational speakers, we very often hear this pursuit of your goals unapologetically and relentlessly. Like, go after your goals, never apologize. You're worthy of your goals. Go after them. No excuses and all this kind of stuff. I heard this even in therapy because I practiced therapy for years, and I would be told by my clients that, I need to go after this. This is what I need to do, and I need a partner that supports that vision. The difference for me is this. It's usually what I'm trying to do. I am trying to be great. I want to do great things, and I need a partner who's going to help me towards that pursuit. Here we have a guy going, I am a great man. And as much as that has that affirmation vibe of like, I'm a great man and you need to be as great as me, there's also a bit of an ego here. And there are moments with Jonathan Majors where we see that ego come through. And I don't know if this is a side effect of him having to tell himself how great he is to succeed in a really difficult industry, which is as an actor, to the degree that he did. But there are moments where we're seeing this ego shine through. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think he made it. I think he's saying, I made it. I am a great man, and I'm trying to achieve it. And I need a great woman to be on my side as a great man. It is, and to be fair, it is psychological manipulation, because essentially he's not, and this is for everybody who's in relationships out there, you take the person for who they are. You don't try to change them who you want them to be. And I think that's the key issue here. He was trying to change her to who he wanted her to be. And that's why this didn't work out. So I think you're 100% on point. And I think his ego was saying he wants a Michelle Obama, blah, 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 but not internalizing that, hey, either you find someone who is like that, but there's no way you're going to change her into that.
Which again, I agree. And I say his biggest thing was he was trying to find it in the devil, because the context that I wish I would have went into the context of why that even came up. For one, she was secretly recording him. For two, she came home drunk with somebody else in their home. So, is the ego going to come out? Yes. It's his home. And yes, there is going to be when you're in a position like that, you have to have an ego. Michael Jackson had an ego. As much as you hear Michael Jackson, the way that he spoke, and it was so soft, and I just want. Michael had an ego. Michael knew who he was. Michael knew he was one of the baddest men on the planet. He knew that. You cannot be in that position without having an ego, and I think that gets brushed off. Nate the lawyer it has an ego. Why? Because of the position that he's in. You gotta walk around with your nuts big. I'm sorry. Because you're not going to tell me what I don't know. That's like me going to go tell Nate the lawyer everything he's saying is wrong. He's an idiot. He's this and the other. When that man has went and did the work, he got the credentials to be able to say what he's saying, and he can stand on that. Your ego is going to allow you to stand on that. There's certain things that you just cannot tell me because my ego would not allow you to try to disrespect all the work that I put in. You're not going to do it, period. I don't care what you say. That's what your ego comes out of. So I get what he's saying. I understand, but I wish a little bit more context was brought into that. Let me keep going so I can wrap this up.
Absolutely.
What happened exactly? Do you know?
Okay, so I'm going to skip past this. Okay, let's stop that. Some of these games are crazy. Oh, let's get to this. Let me kind of go back just a little bit.
We always have to think critically. And that when we see something that 100 times would have been one thing, we still have to critically think about it and go, what else could it be? And I'm always doing this in analysis. Anytime in analysis I come to a conclusion, I ask myself, okay, why is that wrong? And I try to argue from the other side to try to see at the very least what it might look like from the other side. And I bet, Nate, listening to that recording for you, there was a conflict between someone who worked in law enforcement and is listening to this going, there's a couple of things in this call that are wrong, but then there's another side of you who understands culturally what's going on here and how it might explain. Am I right about that there was a bit of a conflict there?
Yeah, definitely, because at first, as a law enforcement officer, I'm saying, well, why is he saying all this? This doesn't make any sense in this context. But then as a black man, unfortunately, I'm like, well, if I came home and as a white woman unconscious in my closet, it's going to be hard for me to explain to police that I had nothing to do with it, right? So
exactly.
So I think you have those two competing interests that, hey, there is an issue here, but also it's like, well, how can I explain to them, because I got to call them to come over here, that this is really not what it seems.
Exactly. So if we look at what I'm talking about, what for, you as someone with experience in law enforcement, me as someone who's been reading behavior my entire life, what threw me off, if I were to see this in any other context, the thing that would throw me off is I would listen to this and I would go, okay, his girlfriend is unconscious on the floor. He's calling the cops. He's very calm and he's going, she's unconscious. And it's like, guys, send someone here now. She is unconscious. And he's talking about how they broke up through text. She insinuated as much through text that she broke up. A lot of focus on this texting. And then he really makes a point of saying, I was at the hotel all night. I wasn't here. And so a lot of it is already providing in this phone call that he wasn't there, already focusing on that. And normally my mind would go, why are you focusing on that? Why would you think that they need to know that you weren't there? If you just walked in and found her unconscious, you just go, get here right now. I just found her unconscious, without going into texts and where you were last night. But then, I thought about it and I said, he's even hinted at this, and we're going to look at it in a moment, that he was scared, he was frightened. And that ultimately there are elements of the way this played out that might justify this fear. I do want to clarify, I'm not necessarily saying that the only reason he was using this language during the phone call was because he was scared of how this would look. It's very possible that there's still a part of him going, I may have something to do with this, because he was aware of what happened the night before and how this might turn on him. So the red flags are still red flags, but
I can
you
agree
do have
with
to
that.
consider other reasons that they might be there, just to zoom out and go, okay, there could be other explanations for this. Maybe not, but could be. So let's look at him talking about that.
In her closing argument, your attorney said that your greatest fear.
You got to act.
I'm going to skip past some of this and then wrap this up.
Things about this. Number one, I understand why he wants to add the racial component, because he thinks it's going to help him in Hollywood. But the one problem with the racial component is that the DA is black. His name is Alvin Bragg, and he's one of the ones who is really, intimately involved in this case. So unless you want to say the black DA is against black men, then you got to actually, there's a problem. And if you want to even make the argument that the police were anti-black or were after him because he's black, they did arrest Grace Jabari too and charge her with assault. It was the black.
But remember, we also got to remember that didn't happen until June. It wasn't like that they got arrested on the same day. So we have to be careful, when we're talking about that, not clarifying the fact that Grace Jabari got arrested way later on. And then when she did get arrested, she wasn't even prosecuted. And the reason why the racial component can happen with Adam Foss, with District Attorney Alvin Bragg, is because of the Adam Foss case. It's because of the Kevin Porter case and Jonathan Majors all lumped up in the same thing. And you don't hear any other white cases coming through like this. So yes, you can be black with a whole white staff and play the role. So to make it far-fetched, or just to say, that's so far-fetched, or, can you prove it, is going to be hard. Yes, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. That's all I'm saying.
DA who dropped the charge. So the race element, I think, is more for public consumption than the actual facts of the case. Now, I do want to address the race component of it. If you notice, in his response, she asked him, she said, well, do you believe this is racist? He said, yes, obviously, blah, blah, blah. But she asked specifically, so you believe if this was a white guy in the same and similar circumstances as you were in, he wouldn't have been charged? And he didn't. It's like that question wasn't even asked. What he changed it to was, well, if you change the situation where I was chasing her, then I would have been shot. So it was a great way to skirt the question. But if this, I think, is more gender bias than a racial bias, in the sense of, if he was white, I think he'd have the same situation would have occurred. I do think, though, that during the phone call to 911, that was more racially motivated in his mind, in him saying, I have this, this white girl. She's in my closet. She looks like she's all bruised up. It's only me here, and I'm calling the police to come in. What the hell are they going to think, right? What the hell are they going to think? But it all comes back to one thing. I think at the end of the day, the racial element is great for public consumption. You're going to have people, who don't care if the majority of the police department is minority. They're going to say they're out to get you. But I think in reality, the argument falls flat. I think it's more gender-based than anything. Okay,
so there it was. Nate, I want to thank you so much for being here and just adding so much context.
All right, so that is my take on it. Again, I do understand where he's coming from. He's a former New York cop. So I don't believe he's going to automatically be like, yeah, the NYPD's racist. Even though that we've seen things happening in New York that we could deem is very racially motivated. We could deem that. We could say that. At the same time, I also want to say that this was an excellent conversation, great insight. There is a few things that I had a problem with, but other than that, this is a great conversation by Spidey, the behavioral arts, and Nate the lawyer. Again, I see all sides, I can see, what Nate is saying, like I said, when you're practicing law in a particular place, I didn't see him, didn't, when I knew who he was, I'm like, oh, he's a lawyer. Oh, he's not going to go strictly out of the NYPD. He's not going to do that. He works in the NYPD. He's got to be the last thing he'd do. That doesn't make any sense. At the same time, I do appreciate his insight. I just don't like the fact that, when we talk about what Alvin Bragg has done, Alvin Bragg has done as a district attorney, there's not something that you want to just, kind of look at. It's a, what, there's some things here that people kept seeing. And, yes, we can say it's gender-based or whatever, but, there's some other stuff that went on with this, like the cops, doing the choking motion and getting all these other additional charges that end up getting dropped and not holding the cops accountable for what they did when they seen Grace Jabari. So that's what I think. What do you guys think? Do you guys think about this video? Put it in the comment section below. This went a little longer, but again, unfortunately I can't be with you guys because I got other stuff going on. But thank you so very much for sticking in, watching this whole entire video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that bell notification so you can never, ever, ever miss one of my videos again. Until next time, I'll holler at you guys later. Peace and vibe higher, y'all. Y'all have a good rest of your day. Where's my outro at? Let me get up out of here. Wait a minute. You're telling me the video's over? What? Huh. Okay, I guess so. If you have came to this portion of the video, thank you so very much for sticking to the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that little bell notification so you never miss one of my videos. And if you really want to, you don't got to, go ahead and follow the social media links that's down below. Until next time, I'll let you guys later. Peace and vibe higher, y'all. Y'all take care of yourself.